Hey, what is up, YouTube? Kyo here, coming at you with a brand new YouTube video, and today we're going to be looking at another game between myself and, in the top left, Machine. We're on a roll here. All these games versus Protoss versus Zerg. And this game was actually immediately after the last replay we played, so I was kind of poking and prodding about my mortal drop there. That thing never died, if you remember. The Hero Immortals. 11 and 10 kills, if I remember correctly. Definitely got to see how Adepts could interact versus mid-game armies of Zerg with some Disruptor support, showing that Adepts not too bad and as a bolstering Protoss unit. Especially with that armor upgrade, or shield upgrade rather, they get quite a bit of shields. Be interesting to see if adding a shield upgrade instead of an armor upgrade or ground attack upgrade would actually make Adepts a little bit more viable. It would have a total number of more defense points shielded than if you had just done it on armor. So, interesting things to think about as the meta in Legacy of the Void moves forward. Again, we can see here going for the extractor and spawning pool. Doesn't really cost much to invest in speed early game as Zerg in Legacy of the Void, which is, something I've been thinking about recently. I'm not sure if it's just because of how early you're kind of forced to expand as a Protoss player, but getting speed this early for Zerg can kind of stunt the progress at which Protoss can take a third base if you're all over their kind of entryways with Zerglings threatening run-bys into their natural and that sort of thing. I really think you'll be able to see players like Life abusing how early they can get Zergling speed and doing some cute little tactics to take leads wherever they can with the mobility advantage that they have in the early game, especially considering that if you are making Adepts right from the start, that Protoss mobility is actually rather limited. Sure, the Shade can move quite quickly with its Shade, or the Adept, I don't even know what I was just saying. But when it's not using the Shade ability, it's actually rather slow. Little rumble in the middle of the map here. You can see here the Zergling trying to escape. Can he do it? He does. This guy should be Neo. Should have been the Matrix. Not really sure what's up with the creep right now. Might just be the map or something else. I don't know. It looks kind of crazy, so we're gonna ignore that. And this is something I've noticed that a lot of Zerg players have done when I've been doing this Adept harass, is they use their ability for drones to morph into things to save them from being killed by the Adept. But back here we are seeing that we're getting up our expansion. We have our Forge just in case we see any Ravager pushes coming. Also have a Stalker up here killing off any scouting overlords. Want to be stashing away our tech, making sure nothing gets into our base. And of course, over here we have the wonderful, wonderful Dark Shrine, which I have been a very big advocate of in Legacy of the Void. One Zergling does manage to pick off a probe there. And this has been a common occurrence in most of the games you guys have seen me playing on stream, is that generally these Zerglings come in and either trade for the Stalker or just create some problems. Like I was saying, it's just that advantage that they get with early game speed. See Machine over here though, he's taking up his third base, moving over his queens, getting his economy rolling. You can see right now that we are still hanging in there in the economy, 38-44. Third hatchery production is going to be kicking in soon. Going to allow Machine to start ramping up his drone and unit production, adding on his gases and a Roach Warren. He does find my pylon down here, but not before we can get in our Dark Templar warp in, which apparently he sees and doesn't think anything of. So we're going to be running over here, trying to take down this hatchery. Back at base, adding on a robotics. Machine's adding up some spores, lair, evo chamber. Make sure he doesn't take any additional damage from these DTs. Already, this is quite a good trade for us. See down here, Zergling's trying to break into our base. We do have Warp Gate, however, so just one sentry warp in and we're fine. Poking up here with our DTs. Trying to see if there's any more vulnerabilities. Adding on some more gas. Good stuff. And like always, adding on some more warp prisms. Oh yeah, flying around, dropping stuff, because why not? Robotics Bay. And this is actually another thing that that I've been kind of talking about when I've been streaming, if you guys have been checking that out. I think it's very interesting how the Protoss economy kind of develops throughout the game. Because while Zerg and Terran generally only need minerals in the early game to produce things like drones and then take more extractors, Protoss needs both minerals and gas to progress smoothly throughout their tech tree and produce units that are effective as the game goes on. So as we see here, we have quite a few minerals at this point in the game, but absolutely no gas on 2 base. And all we're building is adepts. We only have 2 sentries, a few stalkers, and just making a disruptor, a warp prism, and an upgrade on my forge kind of bankrupts us in terms of a healthy gas economy. And as I've been mentioning in my stream, it generally appears that either you have too many minerals and no gas, or no minerals and a lot of gas. So it adds some interesting dynamics to the rate at which you need to make sure you're securing expansions. Certain types of builds require much more gas and for that reason require you to expand much quicker, while sometimes you can kind of hang out on low minerals but lots of gas, because you can always do things like make either disruptors or High Templar, because Protoss has units like that that allow you to kind of just dump your gas. But we see Machine here coming in for his really crazy push. Remember that corrosive bio can destroy those force fields, but oh my god, that one disruptor just killed like half his army. David Kim. You can see here that these Time Warp's not really actually doing too much to aid us. We did kill the Overseer, which is very helpful for our DTs we've warped in here, but right now we're not looking so hot. 50 to 100 supply. Tons of roaches, few Ravagers. At this point, I think it would actually be very smart of Machine or people who do these sorts of pushes to start expanding, even though it might make them have a few less units. The importance of expanding is actually quite large in Heart of the Swarm. You see our Disruptor here coming in, getting up to 14 kills now. Machine still has quite a large army moving in the middle of the map, though. We can see in terms of army supply, we are very, very far down. Just not securing our 3rd base. Not sure how secure it is, though. Our natural's pretty safe. We got 4 cannons. Oh, yeah. And Adept's not the greatest thing versus Roaches, as we have confirmed in our last game. Actually, quite awful with only 11 damage. Our Disruptor coming in here, destroying a ton of these Roaches. Getting a few more here. But even with all these Roaches getting killed off, still about even on the resource loss tab. Keep in mind, Roaches are pretty cheap, so this doesn't really cost Machine too much to do these sorts of attacks. Coming in here for another attack with our Disruptor. Starting to clean these Roaches up. Is the Nexus going to live, though? This is always the very intense part as a player when you're like, oh Jesus, I need that Nexus to live. Doesn't happen this time though, unfortunately. Back at home, Machine starting to mine out these upper bases. 60 minerals, 100 minerals, 75. So this is why I was saying I think it'd be really nice if he had secured another base while attacking. Even if it was just for extra larvae. We see he still has 18 up here. Would allow him to make a lot more drones. Splitting up our disruptors here. Picking off a very nice bit of his army here. We're starting to catch back up in the supply somehow. Still adding on disruptors. Adding on some more mortals. As I was mentioning, you can kind of split between immortals and disruptors because they're kind of like the reverse of each other. One costs a lot of gas and one costs a lot of minerals. And they're both pretty powerful units versus Zerg Ground, so definitely don't want to fly into Hydralisks. Not the thing to be doing. Flying over this creep, checking out what's going on here. And finally transferring over, getting our 16 workers on our base. Adding some DTs in. If Machine had secured this base down here, we would see that 2 DTs wouldn't have really done too much here, but now that we have a DT secured in these positions, it does allow us to prevent him from taking bases. And as the game goes on, little by little, this actually matters substantially more than it would in Heart of the Swarm. Dropping off 2 disruptors up here, targeting these eggs. And we just killed a ton of stuff. I'm actually not in favor of that refunding the Zerg player. I think if you kill the eggs, it should kind of just count as killing the unit. But either way, it does stunt the production. So, very nice either way. See here that our disruptors trying to do what they can. Lost 1 before we could activate his ability, unfortunately. Looks like Machine's trying to secure another base down here, but as we mentioned, we do have this DT in position. What's going to happen? The saddest thing. Now, I've actually been watching quite a bit of Bisu lately, and this is something that I definitely think I'm going to need to incorporate into my gameplay quite a bit more, is these DTs in very interesting positions that kind of stunt the overall progression of the opposing player. Works both versus Zerg and Terran. And if they're not careful, they can either lose building command centers or hatcheries as well. DTs actually kill hatcheries and buildings in general quite quickly. So by the time you get that alert, because of course the alert is delayed for the Dark Templar, that you're being attacked by one, might already be too late. You might get 4 swipes in there and they lose 300 or 400 minerals, and it's a pretty big game changer, especially in Legacy of the Void. You need all the minerals you can get at these phases in the game when expansions are very important. And here we saw disruptors coming in. As you know, they can actually hit buildings with their AoE. And so if he had actually taken both hits from those disruptors, it probably would have killed his hatchery. Have quite a lot of workers here. Probably move on to take a 4th base up here. Start securing this location. See Machine down here still rather concerned about this warp prism that's kind of in between his bases. Right outside the AoE range of that corrosive bile. Flying out of there. Sometimes it's worth taking a gamble to drop these disruptors off. See if you can try and pick off any large parts of the army, even if there are Hydras in here. On the other side of the map, we do have our main army clearing up some creep. Once again, getting this shield upgrade for the Adept. See Machine trying to maneuver around here, get in between our bases. As my army is out clearing creep. Our Adept takes one for the team there to identify where the army is here, and oh god, disruptors can either do so much or so little. We have our main army up here. Have to be careful of those corrosive vials, man. Colossus trying to do what they can versus the concave, but to be very careful in these positions. The Zerg mentality of coming from all angles is multiplied when you've got all these speedy units like Ravagers running all around your army. We do manage to hold there, however. Do retain our Colossus, so we're not too far down in the army supply, but most importantly, we are working on securing another base. We have another DT hit squad coming over here. And fortunately for us, the army of machines actually over here. Getting our army caught out of position a little bit once again, losing our weakened Colossus, but on the good side of things, we are going to be able to kill off this hatchery. Got a few drones here going down to these DTs. With all these DT attacks and disruptors, we're actually up to 22 workers killed. Machine's killed off 24 of his own though, so... Let's see, he's moving up to Hive now. Still adding on more Hydralisks. Yeah, we got him. Some roaches coming down here trying to do what they can. 4 cannons, pretty good though. Some Ravager hit squad up here. Splitting up our army. Trapping these guys in here, killing a few of them. Very nice to get disruptors. Or Ravagers, I mean. And as I mentioned quite some time ago in this game, having this 4th base quite some time ago would have been a very large game changer, especially at this point when I'm already on my 4th base, actually starting to get a bit of head in the economy game now. Very interesting thing about Legacy of the Void is that you have substantially less workers, 41 and 49 for each of us, and instead you're working on having a larger army supply. See right now that we have 102 to 107 in army. Ravagers should be worth like 12 times that though. Pretty scary things, man. Down here getting +3 finally. Very nice. Working on double Immortals. We have a 2nd robotics down here. And this is something that I've been playing with a little bit. I think actually going for double robotics versus someone who's just working off a ground army is very nice. I think both either Disruptors or Immortals, even Colossus, kind of destroy those Roaches and Hydras. And if you can get through those, then Ravagers not as scary as they might otherwise be if there's only Ravagers. 1 million Ravagers, those things are pretty scary. And here we see we're building up a little pylon wall in a Nexus, securing our side of the map, killing off these rocks for some easy access to the middle of the map. And the thing I kind of like about this map is that it allows for kind of Brood War-ish map control. You see our armies kind of moving around one another here and clearing off some more creep and then moving back into position. We did send some more Zealots over here to do some harassment. We are actually going to be able to pick off another hatchery. And this is another thing that I've been kind of making sure people are aware of, is that building up base defenses is more important than it's ever been before. You want to make sure that once you secure a base, you don't lose it. Because if you get set back on economy, some sad stuff, man. Adding on these double disruptors. Using double time, oh yeah. Machine going up to +3 attack himself, adding on some more Ravagers. Be nice to see him spreading a little bit more creep with his queens. Sending our Zealots down here. One thing I've been kind of confused about as I play more and more Legacy of the Void is, when's a good time to actually attack? it's a little bit different to know exactly where you stand in terms of production and overall progression of a different game, more or less. It's kind of a star sense that you get as you play more games of Heart of the Swarm or Wings of Liberty. You just start to know, oh, I'm really ahead at this point, I can definitely attack. But with a new game, it's a little bit harder to tell when you should be attacking and when you should be defending. There's a lot more things to worry about, like spreading out across the map, counterattacks. Army positioning is becoming more and more important. See our Immortals picking off some bases there. And at this point in the game, I think it gets increasingly hard for Zerg on this map. As they've expanded from bottom or top to bottom, there's actually not a really secure base to go for after this. You would assume this would be the next base, but it's actually right next to the natural of the opposing player, so harassing it would be rather easy, and then moving across the top and into their natural or into their main base and recalling back would be rather easy. See an engagement going down here, taking a few shots of that corrosive bile. Army supply just about even. We are a little bit behind, but fighting into a choke. Also never good for a Zerg player. Do have Warpin in Machine's natural, sending over some Zealots and working on this hatchery as well. As I was talking to, I forget who it was. Oh, the STC, when he was practicing for the Shoutcraft tournament they had going on a while ago. We were talking about how players like Liquid Hero are going to be incredibly annoying to deal with in Legacy of the Void, because Warp Prisms and army positioning, running around the map, is going to be ever so important. And players like Hero, who have great harassment and multitasking, are going to be very, very tough to handle. In terms of units, we have 27 Hydras, 26 Roaches, and up to 18 Ravagers now. We have 19 Adepts, but as I mentioned, Adepts only really good against light army compositions, and once you start getting Roaches and Ravagers built in here, their effectiveness goes down substantially. So trying to trade those off down at the bottom of the map here. Coming in for an engagement up here. Army positioning very important in these small locations. We have 3 disruptors with our army right now. A few of these guys can change the tide of the battle very quickly. One going into the army down there. Actually getting quite a few kills on this one. 10 kills. This one getting 10 kills of his own. And already we can see that the army supply of Machine has dropped from nearly 200 down to 100. And it's just these positions you have to be very careful when you're attacking into a Protoss army in locations like this. We also have an Adept and Zealot hit squad in the bottom. And Machine tapping out, knowing he's lost too much of his army, not enough money to rebuild. And this squad down on the right would make, or down on the left, make that a little bit too hard for him to come back. So, another great game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, I appreciate all of the support from you guys, and thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Peace.